So I'm going to have a quick run through the technical guidance for this song that's provided in the exam syllabus materials, and see if I can decipher it a little bit and point out some of the key important parts that are going to help us meet the requirements of what they're going to be looking for in the piece. So I'm going to read through it and pick out the key parts to it. Because it's an exam piece, obviously, we need to be wary of what they're going to be looking for when you play it for the examiner. To start off with, it says rhythmically, this riff needs to sync closely with the backing track to provide a confident sounding performance. So that just means we need to be in time. So what we're talking about is the practicing that and the rest of the song so that everything's nicely in time on the beat and sounds like it fits together nicely. Try to make certain that longer held notes last as written. So that means that there's no actual deliberate rests in this piece. So all the notes, all the chords need to ring out until the next one is played. Obviously you're going to have a little break as you're changing positions or that between chords, but there should be no stops in the sound, in the music. So again, using that first riff section as an example, it's going to be with all the notes ringing out until the next one's played. So we don't want to be doing something like cutting the notes short and them not ringing out nicely. Make sure the arpeggiated figures have clear and controlled rhythms to them. Arpeggiated figures, that means playing a chord, but rather than strumming the chord, so rather than playing all the notes in the chord at once, an arpeggiated figure, or an arpeggio, means playing the notes of the chord individually. So the example in this song, one of them's an E minor, another one's a D minor. So when we're playing those notes, they all want to be ringing out nice and clean like that. We don't want to be doing one note at a time. That type of thing. So nice and clean, ringing through, nice and clear. The open chords require careful fretting hand positioning to allow the open strings to ring clearly. Also required is good picking hand control as you cross the strings. Again, that's referring to particularly those two sections. So the E minor and the D minor. Nice clean technique on the chord playing hand, and also nice clean picking technique so that we hit the individual notes without fluffing any extra notes we don't want to be doing or accidentally muting any notes that should be ringing. You might have noticed I'm talking about those two chords as an E minor and a D minor. That's what they are. That's what they're described as above the staff on the music. You can see the little the names of the chords above. It tells you those. In actual fact, the E minor it's not the full chord. It's not the full E minor chord. We don't need to play the full chord. What I've done, because the section before I'm coming out of an A minor to go into that, so from the A minor, rather than changing my entire hand position and playing an E minor that I don't need all the notes for, all I'm doing is leaving my second finger on my E, on my third string, my D string, and I'm using that as a starting note of my E minor shape. Because I've only got that note to play, the other three strings are open strings. So I can go straight from the A minor just by lifting my fingers off. And then from there I'm moving to a slightly cut down version of a D minor. If we're playing the full chord, I'd also want my first finger down there as well for a full D minor, but we don't need to play that note, so it's easier. I'm just using my middle two fingers to play the D minor shape there. The reason I'm using those fingers is because it's good practice to do a D minor like that, because in other songs and other pieces you might have to do the full D minor, so I need to have this first finger free and available in order to do that. The changes between the chords and single notes should not prove too difficult, but practice both sections individually before trying to combine them with the backing track. So as ever, that's just general advice. Make sure you've got the parts down before trying to stress yourself along with the backing track. The other thing I just want to point out as well, it's not really clear about it in the notes, but I found it really useful for the in the second part of the song, when for the first part we play the riff. In the second part we're actually going an octave up and replacing the riff with a chord based riff. So we're going to use the A minor, and then to play the notes that accompany that and follow that chord, I'm keeping my A minor shape on, so I'm going to play my A minor, and then I'm going to play that E on my D string, and I've lifted off that note on my G string, which would have been an A, to achieve that note, the open G string, and then I can just put that finger back down to play the A minor again. So rather than taking the whole chord off and trying to mess about, I can do it, but it's just a lot of unnecessary work. So I'd rather just move that finger and then into the other one. So hopefully you can see that I've minimised the amount of effort and the amount of movement that I'm having to use on this hand, which in turn is going to help me be more confident in playing the piece cleaner and more accurately because I've got less work to do.